All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. As we're waiting for our debaters to join, because they will join, they were just preparing in the other room. I just want to say a word of welcome and say just a few things about how this debate is going to go forward. Um, Very generally, I want to introduce the context within which this motion is taking place and tell you briefly about the rules that we're going to be following uh, throughout this debate. Do I have my camera on? No, I don't. Now I do. Okay. So, set in the context of social, political, and economic challenges at the global level, rising nationalism and identity politics, the hardening of borders, and increasing in anti-immigration sentiments around the world, high levels of unemployment, youth exclusion, as well as the latest obstacles that the coronavirus has placed on mobility. In that context, education is suffering at so many levels. This is where today's debate is extremely relevant. And the motion for this debate, as you know, is, and I'm going to read it, this House will adopt an internationalization approach in tertiary education across the Euromed region. Okay, as you already know, the winner of this debate is decided by the audience. So there's a pre-vote and a post-debate vote. The team that has moved a bigger percentage of the audience in their favor will be the winner. So it's very possible that the winning team still has a lower percentage in total, but would have moved more of the audience to adopt their side of the debate. Now, I saw when I signed in that the vote was already there. If you haven't voted yet, please vote now. Again, the motion is this House will adopt an internationalization approach in tertiary education across the Euromed region. I think your choices are for, against, and undecided for the pre-vote. For the post-vote, you're not going to get the undecided option. Okay, you have to move in one or the other direction. So if the vote is done, I can talk a little bit about the rules. So let me tell you what my role is. It's basically limited to timekeeping, okay, and some structural management. We're going to start with the government team that will make the opening statement, and they will speak for 5 minutes. It's the team that's speaking for 5 minutes. There isn't one particular speaker. They can see how the 5 minutes can be split and divided between them. These will be followed by the opposition, who will do the same. Then there's an interpanel discussion, and this is where the debaters engage with one another directly. This is we're talking about the rebuttals here. And again, it's 8 minutes in total, 4 minutes for every team, and they can choose to divide it the way they want. Okay, and I will be making sure through the management of the structure to move the speaking role from one side to the other side. Once this is done, after this interpanel discussion, then there's the question and answer period. And this can go on for up to 15 minutes. This is the time where the audience members, you, have the opportunity to ask debaters very brief questions regarding the motion. So I think you can raise your hand and I can just point out to one person, as long as we are ensuring that there's a fair distribution of questions. So one question for the government, one question for the opposition until the 15 minutes are over. Finally, there are the closing remarks. And this is where the debaters deliver separate closing arguments for 3 minutes each. Again, it could be one debater, it could be more. Once all sides or both sides have shared the closing arguments, this is when you place your final vote. And again, just as a reminder, the greater percentage in change between the first and the second vote will determine the debate winner. So as I can see now, As I can see now, Georgios is here, Hajar is here, Julia is here, and Salma. All right, great. So the debaters are here, and we can start. I want to start by introducing the government team, and the government team is made up of Hajar Mayash and Julia Blake. congratulations for making it to the finals. The opposition team is made up of Salma Khalid and Giorgio Verdi. Again, if the debaters can please open their cameras, because we'd want to see you when you're debating. And I'm going to keep my mic open because I will be the person who's doing the moving from one debater to the other. We will start with the government. I will, sorry, I cannot share a timer, okay, but please use your own timers. I will use mine just to tell you, remind you of the time later on, okay? So I'll say you have another 30 seconds, your time is up, okay? So thank you very much. We're going to start with the government. Whoever wants to start, Hajar or Julia.
Thank you. The internationalization of higher education has been influenced by the globalization of our economies and societies and the increased importance of knowledge. It is driven by a dynamic and constantly evolving combination of political, economic, cultural, and academic rationales. And this is what the European Parliament is saying. Respectable members of the opposition, honorable public, welcome. We look today at ensuring inclusive and equitable quality of education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. This is the center of the fourth sustainable development goal that we are debating today, and this is the position of our government today. I will be defining the important elements of the motion and briefly telling you how this could be achieved, and then Hajar will move on, will go ahead and support the arguments on the way internationalization can be achieved, whilst explaining why we need to aim at this in the first place. The internationalization of tertiary education has been defined by the Center of Mediterranean Integration as the international process of integrating an international, intercultural, or global dimension into the purpose, functions, and delivery of post-secondary education in order to enhance the quality of education and research for all students and staff, and to make a meaningful contribution to society. The meaning of tertiary education, it is referred to as also higher education, vocational education, that education that a person takes up above the school age. Internationalization of higher education is a dynamic system, which means that it is changing over time. The motion mentions Euromed region. This encompasses the European countries that are on the Mediterranean rim. And how can this be done? The internationalization of tertiary education can take several forms, including student and staff mobility, academic joint ventures such as joint degrees, members, partnerships, collaborations and exchange, the establishment of branch campuses, and so much more. But distance learning is also one of them, and it is important, especially during this time. I move on to Hajar now to continue the speech.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I would like to emphasize why we should do this. Well, in order to combat some of the interconnected challenges faced by the Euromed region, reforms must be put in place to ensure that the youth are adequately equipped and skilled for entry into the regional and international labor market, ready to take an action roles in transforming their region to foster peace, stability, and inclusion. What should be done? Well, we are requiring serious investments in human capital, including rethinking of education to include increased smart mobility, not only on the people, but knowledge and skills. You might be thinking, well, we are in coronavirus. Well, not only on the physical level, but also on the virtual levels. Here we have seen reshapement of education. This is why we can do it at so many levels. So let me move on to the benefits of these internalization of education, of higher education. Well, we can achieve education quality, we have important influence on the cultural level, also on the level of employability. Let's talk about the education quality. So this model will actually enhance the international dimension of teaching, research, and service, which brings value added to the quality of tertiary education systems. It will also exchange this will lead to exchange with peers and will lead to adopted methods of teaching, innovative solutions, introduction to common standards of development to communities and then there will be like an impact from the Euro and Mediterranean region. So we will have a continuous improvement on the two levels, and there will not be some sorts of gaps. Also, there will be an influence on the cultural levels, as like you can have actually already seen that there is an influence on these cultural. For example, the culture will be going back and forth from the Euromed to Mediterranean. Therefore, like there will be more understanding and tolerance. Also on the employability, this model will boost student skills, and therefore they will be having more employability not only on the regional level but on the international levels. That is why with these evidences we should actually vote for this internalization of tertiary education. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, government. We now move to the opposition to hear their opening statements.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are living through really strange times. We've just been through a pandemic, and our countries in the MENA region are going to undergo through a very hard recession. What this has taught us is that we need to get our educational policies right. We agree on a very foundational level with proposition, we need reforms. But what we will show you as opposition team is that we need to get our reforms right, and that by prioritizing internationalization, we are going to miss out on more valuable reforms that we need to get done firstly. Welcome everybody, my name is Yorgos Verdi and I will deliver the opening speech from the proposition, and I will show you why by prioritizing internationalization, we are losing valuable resources that should be directed instead into the improvement of higher quality education. That should be our priority. So let me present you my case. We, as the proposition has mentioned, there are two main forms of internationalization. The first one is physical. Well, first of all, physical internationalization has been limited by the coronavirus, as the proposition members have told you. But even if we surpass this very important barrier, we must keep in mind that physical internationalization is very costly. The proposition mentioned all these wonderful phenomena of internationalization, which would be traveling to other countries to study, building campuses, changing curricula, but all these are very expensive. All these are very expensive processes that need a lot of money, a lot of resources, which I will show you later on are not really available in the MENA region right now. The second type of internationalization is, of course, internationalization at home, a more virtual approach to internationalization, which takes some of the disadvantages away. It means we have lower costs because it happens virtually through the internet, through internet and computational technologies. However, it is first of all difficult to implement and difficult to define, and second of all, it is sometimes unsuccessful. We have seen through the coronavirus period how virtual education rates have failed students, and how the hype of the massive online courses has not stand. Just to give you some evidence, only 5% of students that register for massive online courses do actually get to complete them. So we do believe there are some problems in internationalization that should be mentioned. Internationalization is not this remedy that will just make all the problems in tertiary university education in the MENA region go away. Now, why is this important? We should mention that right now in the MENA region, we are facing limited resources in educational reform improvement. That was already a phenomenon beforehand, and now with the COVID-19 recession, we must recognize that we may see some budget cuts in third level university. Why is this important? Because the quality of education in the MENA region especially is unfortunately low. MENA universities lag behind. Only 3 MENA universities rank between the 300 universities of the world, and several reports from the World Bank and other international organizations have shown, the MENA institutions lack important qualities such as autonomy, which makes them lag behind. Now, combining these two evidence that I have brought forth, first of all, the problems of internationalization, and second of all, the problems of education right now in the MENA region, we are concluding that we should first prioritize improving quality of university education in the MENA region. By redirecting valuable resources to internationalization, we are not really we're not really being effective on promoting successful educational reforms, which are totally needed in the MENA region today. So the first impact, which is the most important of all, is that we are neglecting home institutions. This money will be redirected into these internationalization schemes, which are being overhyped and which will not benefit us, and which have and by the way, MENA students have been really mobile all these years, surpassing the average mobile rate. However, with no improvements to the quality of education in the MENA region, and therefore internationalization waste these valuable resources. And the second argument, which is also very important, is that unfortunately, this if we do not improve the quality of MENA region universities at first, we will observe a hegemony of internationalization. The brightest students and the most money will concentrate on the hands of few top universities in France, in Spain, and others, just as it happens with the Erasmus program. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to first focus on improving education at home. Internationalization must come then. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgios. Thank you, opposition. The next phase, this next chunk, is the intra-panel discussion. This is the part when the debaters engage with each other directly, and the discussions would be guided by the arguments from the opening statements. So with that, I invite the government to start with their rebuttals.
Thank you. So you are stating that you want to improve education in the MENA region, but at the same time, you are saying that investing in education will not benefit the MENA region. I feel a bit of a contradiction here. Could you please clarify your point?
Well, as we said, we are faced with a dilemma of limited resources. Unfortunately, we do not have unlimited funding. And as we said, during the phase of a pandemic recession, we're going to have even less money to invest in education. Therefore, we should rightly choose where to invest to. Do we want to invest at internationalization without improving the quality of education in our home region, therefore with all the students concentrating into the hands of a few universities and with MENA region universities lagging behind? Or do we want to first improve? So what I would like to ask you is, how do you think we can have both at the same time, regarding having in mind that we have limited
Government?
All right. Yeah, thank you so much for raising these points. They are very, very interesting. But I see that the opposition are kind of adopting a penny pinching strategy. Like they are very, very, stingy when it comes to investing in education. Don't you think that investing in education is not something that we have to consider as costly? Don't be always stingy in terms of education. That was actually has led us to these differences in terms of quality education between the developed countries and developing countries. Let's take the developed and developed countries as an example. They are also actually investing in internalization, that is wider education, and the quality of the education. Also, like there is a lot of intercultural things that are happening not only on the developing countries but also in the developed countries. Also, I would like to mention that this internalization does not go in one direction. You say that advanced students will go to some specific universities. This is actually not true. Like these intercultural exchanges that are happening, for example, in Erasmus or other programs, that are going in different directions. So I bet it would be better if you have a better understanding of the motions, that we can move on. We want to find solutions, not to be stagnant. What I would describe in your policy is a it is characterized by stagnation, because you say, oh, we need to invest in this. We're focusing on our countries. We have been focusing on our countries for long, and it didn't work. We have to change. We have to look for alternative alternatives. And as I mentioned, and I will mention now, education does not only happen on the physical level, it could happen on the virtual levels, like what we're having now. It's not costly, is it? You're just using your home Wi-Fi, and I'm using my home Wi-Fi. We could use it just for entertainment, but we're using it for education and finding solutions. So please have another, please have a grasp of the motion of today and try to find a better solution, please.
Opposition? Opposition, would you like to respond or raise a question?
Yes,
Selma
yes,
or
yes.
Georges?
Yes, I'd like to answer. Chidesh mentioned that the reformation of the education or focusing more on the quality of education is not this much costly. So are you familiar how much of the financial support like the UNESCO and the World Organization are offering to the developing country which has very low quality of education? They are supporting with a really high number of financial support. So this indicates that the reformation of the quality of education is very costly. So what do you think about that? And regarding that, you're saying that it's very simple. You are using your home Wi-Fi. I'm using my home Wi-Fi. Are you familiar that there are a lot of children and students in the developing countries that don't even have access to the simple resources of technology? They don't even have a mobile phone, a Wi-Fi. They don't have this luxury that we have. So what do you think about that?
Government?
Thank you. This is exactly why we want to invest in education and in the internationalization of education, because this sustainable development goal aims at the equality of education. It focuses on the equality and incentivizing internationalization, and therefore we would also be including, it's an inclusive goal of sustainability by internationalizing education.
Any point anyone wants to raise next? Opposition?
Yes, please. Yes. So do you think that the only way of investing in education is the internalization? Don't you think that we need first to improve our local educational quality? Like most of the students cannot even afford the local curriculum to add other extra curriculum and do the internalization. So I'm 100% sure that there are more different ways for improving the quality of education and investing in education. And these ways must come before internalization. They must be a priority. So internalization is not a priority at all.
Government?
Thank you so much for raising that point. And actually, like, the internalization process is a huge process. Not only like we come and do the internalization, it happens at 3 levels: on the regional, on the national, and international level. And here we're talking about the Euromid region. Actually investing in improving the quality of education. You mentioned, oh, so people are not even doing well with the curriculum. That is, can you consider like why there's a high level of unemployability in the in developing countries? And this is because our curriculum is actually lagging behind. We're focusing on theories and things that will not work for the job market, whereas in developed countries they are working. There are lots of things that they are developing on in terms of the curriculum. So engaging this curriculum actually exchange will improve the employability, hence it will improve the actual economic level. So don't think it's just costly. Don't think only on the short term. Look at the beyond. Don't look just at stagnation. We want to move forward, not to be what we want in where we are now. And therefore, you mentioned something good about the economy. You said you kept going that it is costly, and you forgot that this internalization, it's actually with student mobility. It can be good for the financial, beneficial for the economic of the host countries, and hereby say the host countries, not only developed countries, but also developing countries. And thank you so much.
Okay, government time is up. Now it's all up to the opposition. If you have any questions or any rebuttals, please go ahead. You have about a minute.
Okay, so as we mentioned, and as the proposition has not adequately responded to, what we are seeing with Erasmus programs and what we will see in an internationalization process in the MENA region is that that all the students, the mobile students, concentrate in the hands of a few universities. And why that is happening is because the quality of education in the MENA region is low. Therefore, students that live in Spain, for example, would not prefer to go to a university, let's say in Morocco, that ranks low in the overall rankings. They would prefer to go to a university in France. So what we're saying is that all the economic benefits that you're talking about, all the cultural exchanges that you're talking about, will not happen across the region in a homogeneous way. They will happen only in a few territories, only in the cities that own the most advanced universities. And therefore, if we want to have proper internationalization that benefits everybody in the MENA region, we should first focus our limited resources into improving the educational quality and having a proper way. We all want to move forward. We just have to do the right steps in order to do it properly. Thank you.
And perfect timing also, Georgios. So thank you very much. We've just concluded the intra-panel discussion section. We want to move next to the question and answer period. I did mention this. This is the time when the audience, you, have the opportunity to ask debaters questions about the motion. Now, the way we're going to do this, I was told there's going to be a raising of hands, and I will pick people from each side, and I will say the first question is going to go to whoever, and then the next question would go to the other team. So with the attendees. Zainab has raised her hand. Zainab, so can we give her a voice? Zainab, you're muted.
Actually, sorry, I raised my hand by mistake. This is not me.
Okay.
Sorry.
So one more time, I will open up the questioning time, and I can see some hands. So let's start with Basma. You have a question for whom, Basma?
Yes, hello. I actually want to address my question to the opposition team.
Opposition.
Okay, so here the leader of opposition or the opposition team were focusing on improving the quality of education nationally on a national level. But I want to ask, how can we do so if we don't go first to the internalization? If we want a better quality of education, we should learn from the developed country. It's okay to have best universities. It's okay to go in one direction. It's okay to learn from them and to exchange experiences. So how can you invest in education actually if we don't go for internalization?
Okay, may I just say something? We're going to keep the questions really, really short. So they're actually the shortest question and the shortest possible way that you can phrase it, so we can give the government and opposition the chance to make those comments. Opposition, who would like to answer Basma's question?
Okay, so we didn't say that internalization is not beneficial for the countries, but the point is, are our countries ready to go for internalization? Here is the point. We need first to reform and to adjust our internal local education and to make it have a good quality for the students. Then we can start go for searching for another ways to improve it more and more. But the point, are we ready and should we prioritize here or make it a priority? That's the point.
Thank you. Questions to the government? Can I see hands, please? Nuran, for the government, please go ahead. Short question. Nuran, we can't hear you. Okay, anybody else has a question for the, oh, yes, go ahead.
Okay, so how does the government propose that we implement internationalization without it being a burden for the developing countries, economic burden?
Did you hear the question? Could you please repeat it, Nuran, with and raise your voice, please?
Yes. How does the government propose that we implement internationalization without it being an economical burden on the developing countries?
Thank you, Naran, for your answer. And I don't see how it's going to be a burden for developing countries because, as you mentioned, there are scholarships from non-governmental organizations for people who want to do, for example, charity work. They promote these. For example, taking the Erasmus program, it is an internalization process, and it doesn't cost anything for the developing countries if you come to think about it. And on the other hand, it will come with a lot of economic benefits because these students will know. Will be exchanging a lot of ideas, a lot of skills. Therefore, they will come back to their home countries. Therefore, improve them for the better. That is why internalization is very good for both countries on the cultural, economic, and quality of education levels. Thank you so much for your question once again. I hope it's answered your question.
Okay, I have questions in the chat box also, but this next one is for the government. So I want to go for one with the opposition first. Okay, so if you have a question to the opposition, could you please, yes, Muhammad, could you go ahead, please, and raise your voice? Brief question.
So, okay, my question is, you keep saying that in order to have international education, you need to reform your inner education first. What is the stage that you say that our education is ready for international education?
Thank you. So first of all, we do believe that university rankings are an objective metric. So what we want to see is that MENA region universities going up the ranks. So when we see that a sufficient amount of universities from the MENA region are included in the top 300 universities in the world, I believe that we will have a sufficient amount. And the second thing that we want to see is also the socioeconomic development of the region. We're seeing high unemployment rates in the MENA region, which keeps students, in particular from Europe, from visiting, from doing exchange programs in these countries due to the lack of economic opportunities. So we want to see both the development of education and the link of these universities to the market in order to give more incentives to European citizens to come to the MENA region and have proper internationalization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Jihan to the government, and I'll read it. It says, how much time do you think internationalization will take to be implemented? Government?
Thank you for your question. Actually, internationalization of education can start today. We are doing internationalization of education. This is an education platform, and therefore we are internationalizing education. We can start today by using virtual learning, using distance learning, and therefore sending education to other countries, other parts of the Mediterranean. Thank you for your question, and I hope I answered it to you.
Okay, question to the opposition now. Minat Allah. Yes, Minat Allah Mustafa. Yes. We can't hear you.
Yes, my question is actually for the government. So I don't know if.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Manatalla. Sorry.
My question is actually for the government position.
It's okay. For the opposition next. If anybody has a question for the opposition, let's move in that direction first. Anyone? A question for the opposition? I have typed questions for the government as well. Anybody would like to ask a question to the opposition? Think of one while let me see. Okay. Let me read the ones that I have in front of me. My question is, does the government have a policy that fixes the quality in the developing countries so it could attract students from all sides equally?
Oh, I would like to thank the person who asked this question, because the leader of the opposition raised a very misinformation, because he says, for example, student in Spain wouldn't go to Morocco, and I've seen it with the mother of my eye. Like, I've had some international students coming to my university from Spain, from Turkey, from, for example, Asia. So that's a misinformation, and it's happening now. Like, we shouldn't say that the quality of education is all bad, all black in developing countries. Of course, there are universities that are ranking very, very good. Like, you cannot just by the ranking of universities, because there are curriculums that are also good. And like, students come also for international cultural exchange, not only for education. Education is also should be good, and this education could be enhanced from one side if these, as I mentioned, internalization doesn't necessarily mean the internalization of students, but also the internalization of staffs. For example, teachers or curriculum makers, they can also exchange ideas and how they can improve their curriculums for the better. Therefore, they will improve the quality of education in developing countries as well. So thank you so much, and I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thank you. I have questions for the opposition now, but let's just remember it's internationalization. Internalization is probably something else. Here's a question for the opposition from Anonymous. This is very exciting. Do you believe that internationalization of education could help the economies, I guess, of developing countries by graduating more effective leaders which have a vision to invest in resources or to invest the resources? Opposition?
Okay, so again, it depends on the state or the time when we apply the internalization. If we're gonna apply it with a country with a very, very low quality of education, definitely they will not be a help. But as someone mentioned, it will be a burden, economical burden. But if we applied after making the reformations we are talking about, so we first take care more of our education in the developing countries in a specific, then applied internalization, here we can get a great benefit of the internalization. So it depends on the timing, when will we apply it?
Okay, thank you. Any live questions for the government? Yes, Menat. Menatalla?
So yes, my question for the government is, when we talk about internationalization of education, we should really talk about the quality of the academic offer. And there are many international students struggling with the fake accreditation from international programs. So I was just asking how the government team is going to deal with such a downfall in the developed countries.
Government?
Thank you for your question. I think we can split this answer into, I don't know if Hajar wants to comment on this. However, from my end, I would say that yes, as we said before, internationalization occurs in steps. We can't go for internationalization immediately. We have to start by offering good education, good quality of education, and then we can go to internationalization. And that is why internationalization is important. So I think I'm answering your question right by saying that yes, quality of education is important, but internationalization of education will permit education to all countries. So it would make it more, it would create more equality rather than quality.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Sure.
All right. So if I understood your question right, you said that, for example, some students might be scammed by some international schools or something by giving them not very qualified certificates or something like that. Well, if that's the question and I'm answering it right, I would like to say that, of course, there's downside and good side to each one. And that is why, like, there should be policies in terms of, like, checking the credibility of each schools. And the second one is that students should also do a lot of research before applying to some universities, because research from the parts of students and also, like, if policymakers also collaborate in that, we will solve the issue, hopefully. So I hope that answered your question as well. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's a question for the opposition, saying for years, the developing countries have been focusing on the home front. What could change with your policy, opposition?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to say that this is not necessarily true. So what we know from the report on internationalization is that students in the MENA region actually indicate higher on average rates of mobility than students coming from other regions. So it's not necessarily true that we have been focusing on this issue of developing education at home. I would say, on the contrary, universities have been focusing on schemes that do not effectively improve education. So I do not say that all the reforms that have been done in view of improving education at home have been successful. What we are saying is that by adding on that strategies for internationalization, we're just making the problem worse.
Thank you. One more question for the government. Basma, I already took one from you, so I'm going to read Yara's question. Does the government realize that internationalization of education wouldn't be able to maintain protection to the diverse traditions, cultures, and religions, and will create more of an identity crisis to an already developing world? Government?
All right, thank you so much for your concern, and I really appreciate your concern about traditions and customs and vice versa. And I would like to assure you and make you rest assured that, for example, let's take Cambridge University as an example. They celebrate they program a specific week, I suppose, in which like each team they create some sort of what they call societies, and in these societies they present their cultures. So there is an intercultural dimension going there, in which, for example, you can Google it if you wish on YouTube at the end of this debate, how like societies in Cambridge, for example, university go. For example, if you are from MENA region, you are going to present your culture, what to do, for example, certain events. People will join your society to learn about your culture. So there will be like more understanding on the cultural level. Therefore, there will be more tolerance than just like, because when creating a lot of difference, people will think, oh, there's something going on. I don't like to approach that person. But this kind of internalized, internalizational of education will create a lot of coherence, tolerance in terms of religion. So it shouldn't be always that prejudices, because it will make it more and more clearer through these societies. And thank you so much for your concern once again. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
This question.
Sorry?
Can I add something to this answer?
Yes, please.
Actually, when we're speaking about the loss of cultures and traditions, that is not our aim. Our aim is to keep those cultures, to keep those traditions. Our aim is cultural diversity. So, for example, if we take Erasmus program as an example, when I go to Erasmus to do the Erasmus program in some other country, I also take my culture with me. However, it is not cultural integration. It is simply just taking my culture with me, and the place where I'm going keeps obviously its traditions and culture. So we're not eliminating the traditions here. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final question, because time is up now, to the opposition says, how can you prepare young people for an increasingly interconnected world without embracing internationalization? Opposition? Can't hear.
Okay, so again, as I mentioned before, the reformation is the key word here in this debate. So if our education, our local education really qualify our students to have a very mature personality and a very mature mindset and so on, so then they can offer applying the internationalization. But just before this reformation, we'll just be harvesting all the disadvantages and the bad consequences of internationalization. So again, the key word is the reformation of our quality of education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Georgia, you want to add something?
If I can add a final remark to this, what the proposition is trying to convince you is that this is going to be a two-way approach, so an exchange between cultures in the region. But what we have proven is this is not true. This is more of a one-way approach from all the countries to the MENA regions to a few cities, to a few countries that have the higher quality education, that have the top universities. So therefore, this is not promoting interconnectedness, it's promoting developing for only the most developed countries. What we want to do is promote true interconnectedness, promote true cultural exchange in the MENA region. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgios. And I think this belongs partly in the summation section, which is the final section of this debate, which we've just reached. So this is the closing remarks for each of the two teams. Each of the teams will get 3 minutes between them. It's up to you how you divide the 3 minutes. We will start with government, closing remarks, 3 minutes.
All right, I'll start. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone for attending this debate. It was a very, very interesting one. We had tackled a very, very serious issue, and that is the internalization process to a higher education in the Euromed region. I would say that it has been proven through evidence and examples that the internalization approach aims at integrating an international, intercultural, or global dimension into the purpose and functions of delivering for a higher education in order to enhance the quality of education, research for all students and staff to make meaningful contribution to society. And we've seen that it has positive impacts on the economic level, on the cultural level, on the employability, also in terms of influence. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been given a lot of examples, and we also provided a strategy on how this is going to work. Unlike the opposing team who were just like opposing for the sake of opposing, they are promoting stagnation. They are being stingy when it comes to investing in education. You know, like you always have to think about investing in the future, because you shouldn't think about it only from a short-handed point of view, but you should also look at the long term. And internalization of education is happening, and it started happening a while time ago, and we've seen like the fruitful impacts of it. So we shouldn't just claim, oh, we want to make reform, they're just giving claims, we want to do, but they didn't even like provide a strategy of how they want to do it, why they want to do it, what are the consequences of what they want to do. Their strategy is very, very blurry. We don't see what are the impacts that will happen. They're just saying that we want to promote on the national level, but we want later on to go for internalization. So you sense that there is some sort of a little bit of contradiction. Unfortunately, I wish they had provided a better options, because we're here in order to find a solution, not just to oppose for the sake of opposing. So it is now up to you, dear audiences, to think justly and think about what do you want the educational system to be. Do you want it to be stagnant? Do you want it to be do you want it to advance, or do you want just to stick on what you are? Because focusing on just like improving the quality has always been done by governments, and it didn't lead to any good consequences yet. That is why we've seen that the internalization approach is coming with more benefits. So please think justly and vote for the government who wants to adopt the internalization approach to higher education across the Euromed region. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, government. The very final speech by the opposition.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'd like first to start by welcoming the teams, the educators, and the audience. Thank you so much for your time. So I'd like to confirm again our situation that we're totally against today's motion, which think that we should adopt an internationalization approach. So let me start by the weakness point we got from the government team. Unfortunately, your argument was kind of weak because you neglected all the consequences or the bad consequences and the disadvantages of internationalization, and you didn't care about our resources, our mindset here in the Euromed region. So you just wanted to apply internationalization of education with a neglection for the lack of resources, the economical challenges we have here in the region, that most of the students doesn't have even the basic resources of technology. They don't have a mobile phone, they don't have a laptop, they don't have an internet connection. So you just neglected all of that, and you're just saying that we want to apply the internationalization without any study before that. Also, as we mentioned, the quality of education, most of our students in the Euromed region cannot even afford the local curricula. So how can I add an extra burden of them, educational burden on them? They will never accept that. And as I mentioned, you neglected totally all the disadvantages of the internationalization, which we mentioned in our argument, as George mentioned in the beginning. So regarding our strength point and why we should win this debate, because we considered the disadvantages and the advantage of internationalization. We didn't say that internationalization is bad, but we just have a concern on the time of applying this approach. So when we just do the reform first in our quality of education locally, then we can go to this approach. So we said that we need to start with the reform. We believe that internationalization will never go to the improvement without this local reformation. We mentioned how much costly the physical internationalization is, and the students and the countries cannot afford all of that, and especially in this economical burden we have in our region and the lack of resources. Also, we said it has a very, very advanced technology. It has at least every child should have a smartphone and a stable internet connection. But unfortunately, we don't have this in our region. So we should consider, again, the minimum resources we have and consider the great challenges we're currently facing, especially in the COVID-19 situation. Actually, this is a long-term challenges, not in the COVID-19, but it's more challenges here in this time. So we concluded and mentioned the problem of internationalization and the problem of the resources. Once we can solve this disadvantage and this problem, then we can start thinking about the internationalization approach. But so far, finally, we need to focus first on the reformation of our local education to have a better quality of our graduates, to transform our developing countries to more and more developed countries in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have come to the conclusion of this debate. It's been an extremely lively and extremely heated debate. I'm very happy that you felt so involved in this. Now comes the moment of truth, because now we're going to get the post-debate vote. So Abalingwa, can you help us with that? And once this is done, we can see who the winners are. Okay. How do we get the result? Does it pop up, or Abalingwa, can you help us? Okay, PowerPoint will be shared. Okay, great. In full screen. Wonderful. So we will know in a second. Can you hear the suspense? It's my heart beating. Okay, do we want to close the vote? Okay, so what was before or after? Can we see the PowerPoint in full screen? So we have before and after, and the before and after to see the percentage. Okay, Abalingwa. Okay, I mean, eventually it's going to happen. In the meantime, let me tell you about just a reminder about what's there she is. Okay. Okay. So based on these, there was the 63% for the motion, 15% against the motion, and 22 undecided for the pre-vote. The post-vote has moved in favor of against the motion, and therefore the opposition wins this debate. We're gonna hear a round of applause. Congratulations, opposition. Well done, and well, yeah, you convinced them pretty well. Let me just end by saying thank you, well done. Just a reminder, tomorrow, it's still going on. It's not finished yet. There's the networking activities tomorrow at 10 o'clock, okay? And on Monday, there's the high-level policy dialogue and the youth-led consultation. Again, you start at 10 o'clock CET. So look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much. We come to the conclusion of today's session, and I guess you'll hear more about what happens to the winners. You get certificates, and I think everybody gets certificates of participation, but the winners get the certificates of winning. Okay, so congratulations one more time. Thank you very much. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. Bye-bye.